All right. Well, hello and welcome everyone to the National Association of Environmental Medicine's open house. It's so great to see some familiar names and also some new names here tonight. I'm Catherine Carvlin, NAEM's current president of the board. And here at NAEM, our mission is really to provide education and to build community. And in light of that, we've gathered here today to share some clinical pearls and to get to know one another as well. So thank you all for being here. Grab your mocktail and let's get started. All right, a little bit about the flow for tonight. So after this introduction, I'm going to give you a brief tour of our new website, and then we'll shift into the main segment of the evening, our Ask the Experts panel, where some of our board members will discuss topics that you all have said are important to you. Then we'll split up into break rooms for our member Mingle, and that'll be a quick chance for us to get to know each other and put some names to faces, meet some new, and fellow NAEM members. And then finally, we'll come all back together for the raffle. We have some incredible prizes here tonight, and you must be present here in order when your name is called in order for you to win a prize. And this is really the first time that we're doing an open house like this with this format. So we really appreciate you giving us some patience if we have any tech stumbles. And if this format works well, let's do it again. And we've got a few questions for you to answer at the end of the event. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is get started with a tour of our new website. So let me share here. Oh, hold on. That is not the right. Stop share. Don't think that worked. Okay, can you all see our website now? All right, so let's take a little spin around the new website. First, I wanted to show you our Learning Center up here, and we've got free educational content for everyone, members and not. So we'll start here with our Environmental Health Questionnaire, which is our crucial resource really for collecting a history and talking about potential environmental exposures with your patients that could be impacting their health. So you can download it right here, member or not, you can share it with anyone. Next, we'll go to our wildfire smoke resources page. And that's one of our biggest resources. We provide this page free to anyone. And our board has worked really hard and with experts to create these extensive clinical guidelines for practitioners. And we have some patient handouts. This one here in the middle is about wildfire exposures, and it has a before, during, and after section, so you can just jump right to the section that you need. We also have a few webinars and some educational information, as well as about information about our partner organizations related to wildfires. All right, so next I wanted to show you the patient resources page. And this has a bunch of handouts for our clinicians to give to your patients, as well as websites, books, documentaries we recommend for deeper learning. And then I'll jump to our Find a Provider page, which is a great tool that we have to connect professionals and patients. And professionals, we've got the licensed and then our allied professionals, and this is a look at our licensed one. You can see we've got a map here of all of our providers. You can filter by specialty, advanced training, insurance, telehealth, to find the right type of providers that are for you and for your patients. And then this is a member benefit that we have as well. Okay, next I'll jump to our membership side of things. I'm logged in now, but so when you log in, you first come to this member dashboard. And one of our highly sought after member benefits is our clinical guidelines, which is where we provide up-to-date information about the 10 different toxicant classes These in-depth resources explain exposure sources, kinetics, testing, and even treatments for all of the toxicant classes. We also have patient handouts and webinars to go along with the guidelines as well. And then members also have access to an extensive database of our webinars and our courses, our past conferences. So you can continue deepening your knowledge, and we organize them. We've got, by date, and then we also have by topic. So you can easily jump to topics that interest you and find more education there. And what I love about NAEM is our clinical forum. It's our community, right? It's a great way to learn from each other and build relationships. And this forum is separate from our website. And so once you're a member, you can, allied member or professional member, you can join our forum and ask questions about cases, and get feedback from others as well. And then finally, I wanted to show you our member resources page here. And this page is another place to find a lot of our PDFs, all of our resources, especially our patient handouts. We've got some mini clinical guidelines, our EHQ here again. And we've partnered with some of our sister organizations like EMEI and Dr. Paul Anderson. And we have some member discounts also listed on this page. And you can find a full list of our partners here on our partner website page as well. All right, I think those are kind of the highlights of our website that I wanted to share with everyone. And that concludes our tour. So I think I'll pass it on to our MC for the night, Dr. Lori Mae Jansen, and she's going to bring us to our next portion, our panel discussion.
Great, thanks, Catherine. My name is Lori Mae Jansen. I'm a naturopath in Canada, and I'm a board member of the NAEM. And like she said, I'm going to be one of your hosts tonight. So we're obviously very excited for you to join us for a great panel discussion with our board members and board advisors, speaking about important environmental med topics. So in this Ask the Experts time, we're going to be spending about 10 to 15 minutes for each panelist to chat about their topic. And at the end, we'll spend 1 or 2 minutes answering a couple of those questions. So you just need to, if you have a question, pop it into the Q&A tab. So not just the chat, but there's a Q&A section at the bottom. If you can't see it because your screen is minimized, go to the More button. There's 3 dots, and you should see it pop up there, and you can plug in your questions there. And we'll kind of sift through those and ask the experts at the end of their section of time. And if your question doesn't get answered, what we're going to try and do is pop some of those answers into our membership chat group, the groups.io group for NAEM, after the open house tonight. So we'll try and get to those questions soon. For our panelists tonight, we're very lucky to have Drs. Lynn Patrick, Stephanie McCarter, Tina Bowden, Louise Tolsman, and Catherine Carvlin presenting their insights in clinical pearls. So to start us off, we're going to get going with Dr. Stephanie McCarter, and she'll be speaking tonight on EMF and how to use our EMF clinical guideline. Over to you, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot to cover. Our guidelines are pretty extensive, and they're a really great tool. We also have the patient guide, as Catherine said, and I just want to thank Safer Living Technologies for the prizes. I mean, this is a great prize, having this Safe and Sound Pro meter. It's a crucial thing for your patients. And just saying these guidelines are just filled with all kinds of references that are super important. And you can use these to accommodate, write accommodations for your patients when they're faced with a smart meter or, any kind of work accommodations. We have so many good studies in there. The European Academy review in 2016, Dr. Ray's clinical study, the only one that's done with multi-phase, he had an EMF testing room, which now no longer exists, unfortunately, but he does amazing data. It was a multi-phase study. So it's very important to have as a tool to help, prove that there is electrical sensitivity. And to my knowledge now, electrical sensitivity is now becoming known as electromagnetic radiation syndrome. So and we're trying to update, like Kathleen Mulligan did a fantastic job putting all these add-on edits because I wrote these 2 years ago and we have so much more information. So the first few pages of this is basically going through all these definitions and reasons for people having electrosensitivity. But the ground regulation system, it really is a reflection of that. I don't know if you can see that slide. Are you able to see that? Let's see.
Stephanie, you just need to share and bring your slides up.
Okay, there you go. So Dr. Ray always talked about electromagnetic sensitivity as kind of an inflammation overload, and it's usually due to, and I've lectured about this, different things like molds, chemicals, heavy metals, and now we have COVID and microplastics. So we have all these things that are messing up this ground regulation system, which is made up of these protein glucose molecules, these peptoglycans, and they're communicating, as you can see in this diagram, with not just the blood vessels, but the nerves endings, your immune system. So what we think of as intercellular space is actually a huge communication network. And what happens is it gets overloaded. It gets depolarized and never gets back to repolarization. So when you have EMF sensitivity, it's usually a sensitivity of that part of that GRS is like a gel. It's not fluid-like. So our goal in detox is to get these toxins out in a way where that becomes fluid-like again. And one of the primary things I want to just, so if you look under toxicant groups in our handout, I'm kind of going in order of the handout, you'll see that we have all the different frequencies. And so that's really important to educate your patients, because whether they have Lyme disease, whether they have molds, like I've had so many patients that have come to Dr. Ray and they're wanting to be treated for EMF sensitivity and they were loaded with mold. And so you really got to, look at the whole picture. But whatever you do to treat these people, you always help them by getting their environment lower, especially the bedroom, which I've lectured on. It's in the handouts. It's so important to have sleep, right? And to get that bedroom low. So if you look at the next slide, I loan my meter out to people. Let's see, there we go. The Chem Protect is, and this is all in the handouts in the guidelines. But the Chem Protect is more economical, and I like it because it has lights, because people, is it a green light? Is it red? Is it orange? Like, that's easy for people. And it does all three fields: magnetic fields, electrical fields, and radio frequency. And so the Sleep and Sound Pro is one of our prizes, as you can see in the middle. I love that meter and I loan it out to patients all the time. I can't tell you how many people come to me and say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it, but on my Alexa and my smart TV were not even on, but there's like signal, and I found it by this meter. And when they turn it all off, guess what? They start sleeping. And then, like, the neighbor's Wi-Fi is across the room, but they didn't know it till they got their meter. And then on the far right is the tri-field meter, which is the magnetic fields. And Safe and Sound, Safer Living Technology sells all of these. The magnetic fields are important too, as is dirty electricity, but I'll get into that. And then the next slide, I just want to show you, I didn't realize this till recently, but Safer Living Technology actually has this low electrical magnetic meter, and it has a cable that can actually help you measure the body voltage. And that's important because now we have all these grounding devices. It's really helpful for people who are living in the city and they can't get away from all this stuff. So you get a canopy or you're using grounding sheets, and the body voltage is really important to measure. And these companies are really good at teaching people and helping them out. So it's important to hook them up with this, because if you're grounding electrical fields with your grounding sheet, you're going to feel worse. Or you've got a canopy, like people who live in these 5G areas that can't get away from it, the canopies. And I want to tell you, this guidelines, we have all the different biobiologists we recommend. We have the different organizations in there. So you've got every tool you need to help these patients. So if you look at the sources of exposure, I just want to say that one on the right is the new Pro millimeter wave. It measures 20 to 40 gigahertz, which unfortunately we're getting with, 5G, 6G is coming. It's an expensive meter, but if you can afford it, it's probably a good idea to have one. And then the next thing is, talking to your patients. Do you live near a power generator? Do you live, next to these different power transformers? Like, all of these things are really important, and getting them away from that. So we have that in your guidelines, because every little bit counts. And the next section talks about health effects, which we know oxidative stress, calcium channel influx is a big part of EMFs. But guess what? So is COVID. So all we're now learning is the viral porins in these viruses actually make little protein holes through your membranes, and calcium gets in. So you're getting more oxidative stress. So it's magnifying it. So anything you can do with electromagnetics to lower that is going to help the mitochondrial damage. It's going to help all your body systems. We know that, brain inflammation and now early Alzheimer's, there's so many, all the different body systems are affected. So we've got all that listed for you. And mast cell activation, it's a big thing that we talk about. Well, Ollie Johansson first study was in 2002. He talked about screen dermatitis, people flushing from the screen of the electromagnetics of the computer screen. And so, mast cell activation is made worse. So it's really important, and it's more difficult in this world to lower that, but it's really important. So the symptoms, a lot of times they mask the same thing as what you would hear of somebody with mold exposure or Lyme. So we kind of, go through those as well. And the big ones are tinnitus, it's tingling of the skin, they can't sleep, anxiety, depression. But I heard a podcast yesterday talking about a man that got a brain tumor in the early days, and he had a personality change. That was it. His wife was like, there was really nothing much different. So there's so many different things that we list for you to look at and putting that picture together. The testing, unfortunately, we don't have the testing room anymore, but there's lots of different ways by history and just, process of elimination of other diseases that you kind of, and getting the person away from Wi-Fi and they feel better. There are, in a lot of countries, they recognize this as a disability just based on history. And then treatment, as I said, sleep, we put this in your guidelines, the order of how important it is, sleeping and pooping. And once you get these patients doing that and they start getting better, it is a process with electromagnetic sensitivity because they tend to flare. And that's important. Once you get these patients a little bit stable, then you really need to talk about limbic training. That's also in your guidelines. We've added primal trust because patients teach us a lot. They teach us what works. And Annie Hopper's brain retraining is really important, and that's all in here. But also the primal trust because it's working from the ground, like the vagus nerve up, not just the limbic down. And, Bell Palm did all these studies and showed the thalamus and amygdala were not getting good blood flow. And that's all in your guidelines as well. So we know that's an important thing. And so I heard a practitioner say once, it's what you tell the patient is, hey, your body got toxic and it's changing the way your brain is functioning. So we go back and then we go back to, as we're healing the body, we're healing the brain, right? We're healing that part of it. So I also list in here these meters, and we can click on these links because Kathleen has got it really easy. So you just click on these links to get these meters ordered. Shielding. So if a patient is in, we have in here, the typical patient, our goal for guideline for their, RF exposure, magnetic field, dirty electricity. And then we have the more sensitive patient, which it's tough. But we also have found that if it's over 10,000 microwatts, which unfortunately is occurring a lot, we get a biobiologist in there. And like I said, we have those all listed. And the shielding paint may come into play, the different shielding paints, and then the canopies. And I've actually added another biobiologist who actually taught me you can get a canopy. He's made it from Safer Living Technologies. His name is Damon Coyne, and he has a kit where you can take it to your hotel room and put it up. And it's fabulous. And he also does he helped me with hardwiring my internet, which is out here with the satellite. So we have, Shielded Healing, Brian Hoyer. We have a lot of great people. And then there's another whole section in here about treatment. And what's really important, if you go back to the, I just want to show this slide real quick. So dirty electricity is another whole part of this. We have Magda Havis's website on here. She has great videos showing how dirty electricity affects us. And you've got the Greenway filters, the Stetzer filters. These sites also have wonderful explanations, so you can, print those for your patients. But dirty electricity is that quick harmonics that's going on in LED lights and anything that has a variable speed on it on your fluorescent lights. And then on the far right is the Power Perfect box, which is something you're going to involve with biobiologists. If you have a lot of people that have a lot of solar, it's really hard. Sometimes it's not enough to have these little filters. So you've got ways and it makes a huge difference. I've witnessed it with patients. Here's an example of the canopy I was talking about. Grounding is now gone to a new level. So we've got earthing harmony, we've got grounding well, and these sheets and leather shoes are wonderful. I do caution people that when you're really EMF sensitive, they'll put their legs on this and say, oh my gosh, I feel tingling. So that's the super sensitive people. And I say, even if you can do 5 minutes, but that's where you can do the body voltage, make sure they're not, there's a thing that comes with it, checks your outlet, but I still turn off the breaker to that outlet. But it's like connecting to the earth. It's like sleeping outside. And so just have them using that. And then we've got adapters now, Tech Wellness, and Jeremy Johnson with EMF analysis teach you how to, basically you can put your iPhone on a hardwire and have it on airplane mode. It's wonderful. And so these are wonderful things. And it's once these patients start doing it, it's really interesting with these young people because they don't want to give anything up. It's so you can teach them these things. I wanted to mention real quick before I run out of time that one of the new studies is by Robert Brown. He's a radiologist, and he was showing how and we listed this study. In real time, he's doing ultrasound of a blood vessel, of laying a popliteal vein in a woman with a smartphone, and we see actual rouleau formation. So, slowing down of the blood flow and pre-clotting. So I have been showing that to the patients who come in who are young, have got their laptop sitting on their lap getting their ozone treatments. And they say, oh, so because sometimes their ozone starts to not work. And I'm telling them, yeah, because the blood's not flowing because you got all this stuff sitting on your body. So that's really helpful. And then oxygen, 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 because the microcirculation is not getting blood flow. So when you go back to that, you remember this GRS, you don't have blood flow, you don't have oxygen in getting to those cells. And that's a big part of COVID, right? Is that we don't get these cellular toxins out. And so any form of oxygen, Dr. Ray taught the von Ardenne method with 2 hours a day of oxygen. I actually have a slide. Concentrators are a little bit of a problem because of the EMF, but I tell people get a really long Tygon tube and then it's not so close to you, because oxygen is crucial in these patients. They get better so much faster. And then the Live O2, which is done in Charleston, and they're starting to do more of that. That's where Mark Squibb was on a mountaintop and said, hey, if I go with oxygen and exercise and then elevation, I'm going to pull that microcirculation open because and get oxygen, because my brain's saying I need more. And I've seen that work really, really well. And so I think I'm running out of time. Am I good on time? I just want to mention there's peptides in this thing. And the patients have taught us, it's harder to get peptides, but they have found websites, and we've listed all those. BPC 157 is excellent. There's one called Gut Feeling. It does a lot of gut healing with KPV for yeast, thymosin for your immune system. Thymosin beta is more for your, traumatic brain injury, which is important. We've got all the things in your history to ask the patients. And then the harmonizers are a controversial thing, but I will say I have found, because I deal with really sick people, that the EMF solution products are helpful. As I said, in the pearls, in the guidelines, you have to kind of go slow with those people. You can't just put the house thing on where it harmonizes the whole house, because they just literally fall over. And that happens a lot with Lyme. So, I also want to mention that there are a lot of biologists who really don't like these. The problem that happens is the patients think they have a false sense of security, that I can use my laptop as long as I got my chip of my harmonizer on my laptop. So I teach patients, no, this is an adjunct treatment, but you still want to turn everything off, especially at night, in your bedroom where your body's trying to detox and get sleep, because that's inflammation in the brain, right? And you want to get that toned down. And the other thing I have in here is like the battery of tests. So metals, molds, chemicals, those are big. And I just had a 76-year-old patient who'd been coming to Dr. Ray. She has no more EMF sensitivity, but your baby boomers are full of metals, lead and mercury in their teeth and dental health. We have a whole beautiful dental chart that shows you all the meridians to your teeth in this guideline, because I've learned that is, like from Dr. Klinghardt, that is crucial. If you detox a patient and they get better, you still need to address cavitations, root canals, mercury in their mouth. We list the smart dentists. This is a great handout because you have everything you need, but these are the pearls that I really want to emphasize. And what was the other thing? So we have your resources. We have your resources for clinician groups, and people are very helpful. 704 No More is coming out. This is a organization. They're going to have a big meeting in Austin with several people, and that's something to also go look into to help, try to stop the Telecommunications Act. It's 704 about where you place your your towers, because they can put them anywhere they want, and we're trying to slowly work with that to stop that. And co-infections. So, right, we want to work on co-infections. The big thing with patients is trying to get them in the sauna, avoidance, and then I'm a big fan of colonics as well. So, or just enemas, just to get this dysbiosis. It's so extreme. Just get that out. And colonics are really being used everywhere. So I can ask more, answer more questions. That's a lot of information. So.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was so good. And actually, probably everyone's like, oh, wow, where do I get all this information? And to remind you, in the chat, that's the patient handout. So that's something you can access right now. And if you're a member of the NAEM, then you can access all of the clinical guidelines for practitioners in all the resources that Stephanie was mentioning, which was amazing. Thank you again, Stephanie. Okay, we're going to keep moving. Next, we have Dr. Lynn Patrick, who's going to be talking about affordable and accessible treatment for environmental medicine. Take it away, Lynn. Oh, just unmute. I think you're not unmuted yet.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Uh, I think I have to just do one little thing. So I was asked to talk about cost-effective treatments. Prior to becoming an environmental medicine physician, I had a private practice, but I also was a care provider for people with HIV and AIDS and hepatitis C. So I worked in a clinic for folks who had very, very limited resources. So it's actually an honor to share what information I've gathered about limited resources in environmental medicine. I only have a few minutes. You've got the slides. So if I don't go through every single slide, forgive me, but you can go back and review them. So we are in a very scary situation right now with health. You can see this is Blue Cross Blue Shield. They do a health index this is based on 55 million millennial Americans that were commercially insured by Blue Cross Blue Shield. You can see what happens to their health at the age of 27, right? 27 years old, their health starts to decline really precipitously. The comparison of Gen Xers and millennials, the millennials are much sicker, right? So younger people are getting sicker younger. And you can see the difference here between the millennials and the Gen Xers. This is highly associated with many environmental exposures, like Dr. McCarter, who, by the way, her clinical guidelines are a whole book. There's nowhere else you can get this information. I'm so proud of her and so excited that we have that. But in addition to EMFs, etc., we have significant exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals. And that's what I'm going to focus on, is these endocrine disruptors and how they alter the immune system. They increase aging, and the term that's being used right now is aging. And so a lot of that is due to endocrine disrupting exposure. Hypertension and major depression were the top diagnoses in these young millennials that were measured by the Blue Cross Blue Shield Health Index. Both of these conditions are highly connected to and caused by aging. And why is this happening? Well, look at about 1993 or 4, when the production of plastics really took off globally. That's one of the main causes. We are kind of drowning in plastics. Everybody knows that. One of them that is really, I think, causative for a lot of illness is bisphenol A. Bisphenol A causes significant microbiome alterations, including, right down at the bottom in red, in bold, Methanobrevibacter, which is the leading cause of methane SIBO, caused by exposure to BPA, in addition to a lot of other dysbiosis. Equal to BPA exposure, at least in the animal models, is equal to the standard American diet, high fat, high sugar diet, in terms of the damage to the microbiome. So what's the solution? Avoidance, avoidance, avoidance. And this is something that is free for all your patients. It's totally free. We know that bisphenol is used in the lining of all cans. I'm including aluminum cans, including beverage containers. That's why I showed all these wonderful aluminum cans full of sparkling water, because they are a source of BPA exposure. There are other sources, but the main ones are food containers, and specifically food cans and beverage containers. There are others. I want to draw your attention to this wonderful article down here. The PMID number can easily be put into PubMed, and you can bring it up. Some wonderful scientists at the Silent Spring Institute figured out how to find that, because it's not always on the label, hidden BPA in products. So you can read that article to figure out how they do it. So I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on globally, politically, but EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, identified the tolerable level of BPA in a disposable coffee cup. There is 10,000 times that level. We in the United States have a tolerable level that's about 5,000 times higher than the new EFSA level. So we are literally all exposed to levels of BPA that cause damage. Avoidance really works. This is a study that looked at avoidance in women, teaching them how to avoid BPA and showing that their levels actually went down as quickly as 3 weeks after they initiated avoidance. Now, how do we get rid of BPA? I don't have time to go through all the pathophysiology related to BPA, but it's everything. Increased risk of mortality, increased risk of death from cardiovascular disease, increased risk of diabetes and obesity and reproductive problems. I could go on and on. Autoimmune disease. But BPA comes out in sweat. So BPA actually does come out in the sweat of those who participate in medical sauna. This was a study done by Dr. Stephen Genois, one of our wonderful EM docs, showing that even in people who we couldn't see BPA in the urine and the blood, it came out in the sweat, which leads us to conclude that BPA is probably stored in the body somewhere and probably in the adipose tissue. Polyphenols, speaking of low-cost solutions for BPA, polyphenols have been identified in multiple studies as a solution to BPA toxicity. Green tea, most of our patients can afford organic green tea and can drink that. Some of them are caffeine sensitive, but most people can tolerate green tea. There are significant other polyphenols that are really useful, like curcumin, resveratrol, genistein, etc. Caffeic acid, which is found in fresh fruits and vegetables, which is now being studied as a drug to treat Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, has significant anti-inflammatory activity, specifically anti-inflammatory activity as a result of BPA exposure. Magnesium. So I am segueing here, obviously, from avoidance as BPA as an example of how we can actually help our patients through avoidance to interventions that are low cost. And I don't think there's any evidence that BPA causes magnesium deficiency, but it wouldn't surprise me. So magnesium, this is information that came to us from our dear Dr. William Ray, who ran the Environmental Health Center Dallas, and Dr. McCarter worked with him. He found that 40, and I think this is really now, if we look today, it would probably be more like 60%, but 40% of his environmentally ill patients were clinically magnesium deficient. We know that at least 50% of the general population doesn't receive enough magnesium, but this was clinically deficient, obviously deficient as related to magnesium deficiency symptoms. But remember that one of the things magnesium does is it allows for the enzyme NADPH, cytochrome reductase, that not only helps with phase 1 detoxification, but works in the mitochondria to allow for mitochondrial function, right? Magnesium deficiency knocks out glutathione recycling, and it alters ATP production. So magnesium is critical. And I think that getting patients to be magnesium sufficient, which is not easy, is a really critical step of helping them get better, right? So one of the problems and why people are magnesium deficient is because they diurese magnesium. Bill Ray found this out in his environmentally ill patients, is that they pee out magnesium like crazy. You put magnesium in, whether it's IV or oral, and they just urinate it away. So that is something that has to be addressed. It's not clear whether that's just pesticide poisoning or whether that's just chemical poisoning in general. But as people detoxify and get better, they will be able to hold on to their magnesium. In the interim, you may have to use IM. I did a lot of magnesium sulfate IM shots in my clinic. I think we charge like $25 for them. I don't know that we could do that today, but that's what we did back then. And we also did magnesium loading. Now, that last bullet point is critical. In patients who are pesticide exposed, I don't want to say pesticide poisoned because we think of that as acute pesticide poisoning. I'm just saying people who are pesticide exposed, standard American diet, they may not be able to absorb magnesium. You may need to give them choline citrate along with their magnesium in order for them to actually absorb that through their small intestine. So, other things we can do to decrease this inflammaging damage is to use other antioxidants like omega-3 fatty acids. I know that good fish oil is not cheap, but I think it is critical. Prebiotic fiber is also critical, and that is affordable for almost all our patients. And then any way you can get antioxidant polyphenols into their diet is also critical, even if it's only black tea or green tea. That's significant. So I gave you the actual amount per day dosing of those polyphenols. And this is from one of my mentors, Dr. Mark Houston, who's a cardiologist, about the actual data on a good EPA, DHA, delta vitamin E, gamma delta vitamin E, and gamma linoleic acid, which you have to have in your combination fish oil in order for things to be balanced. So medical sauna, really, really, really important. Not all your patients will be able to tolerate sauna. They might be able to tolerate 90 degrees for 5 minutes, and that's what you start them out at. But as you can see here, medical sauna is really helpful for a lot of the toxicants that we hold in our tissues and in our adipose. I had a lot of patients who couldn't afford sauna. So what did we do? We had them bring a heater into their bathroom and put a towel under their door and sweat. It doesn't matter whether it's radiant heat or far infrared. And when Dr. Stephen Genois did his blood, urine, and sweat study, he compared on the right sweat to blood ratio for far infrared, and on the left, sweat to blood ratio for radiant heat. And he found out that the sweat to blood ratio was actually greater, meaning you got more out compared to what was in your blood with a radiant heat sauna. Now, that doesn't mean that far infrared doesn't have other benefits, but I'm just saying you don't have to have far infrared in order for your patients to get better. The other thing about alternatives to sauna is that exercising, sweating is the goal. Doesn't matter how you get there. So being outside in the sun for 30 minutes, exercising in a warm room or exercising outside, the goal is to be able to sweat. A lot of our sick patients who have POTS or autonomic dysfunction can't sweat, but they will begin to sweat if you allow them to work up to sufficient temperature in the sauna. It just takes time. So this is the prescription. You're going to want this slide, the prescription for medical sauna and all the things that you have to include in medical sauna. The contraindications are that last bullet point. They are personal communication with Dr. Stephen Genois and my mentor, Dr. Walter Krinian. N-acetylcysteine is not just a precursor for glutathione. It has significant antioxidant benefits on its own. I'm going to let you read about how it's been shown to decrease the damage from metal toxicity and from solvents and air pollutants, as well as organophosphate pesticides. NAC also upregulates glutathione peroxidase, which is a major antioxidant in the body. In the hierarchy of antioxidants in the human body, glutathione peroxidase, superoxide dismutase, and catalase are at the top. And so you want to absolutely increase the production of those antioxidant enzymes. And fiber is inexpensive, and it is absolutely critical for I know you can't give everybody fiber if they have SIBO, etc., but you can, in patients who can tolerate, really help them increase their capacity to depurate if you give them fiber. Oh, by the way, sun fiber is okay on the FODMAPs diet. It's been kind of acknowledged as an okay fiber to give for FODMAPs patients. Last but not least, air and water filtration is no longer voluntary on planet Earth. I'm just telling you, unless you live maybe, I don't know, Antarctica or the North Pole, but even then, you get exposure. So for your patients who cannot afford air filtration units that cost $800 or $1,000. There's some very good information, research published on Corsi Rosenthal filters and how effective they are. They're labor intensive. You got to make them. These are filters that use, or excuse me, they're air filtration units that you build yourself from things you can buy at Lowe's or in Home Depot. But they're published in the medical literature, and they've got some really great, I did a couple of podcasts on them. In our patient handout on air filtration, there is a link to a University of Washington video that shows you how to build a Corsi Rosenthal filter. In terms of water filtration, the pour-through pictures do have good data on them. Zero Water has a glass pitcher option. The only thing about why is that on there? Sorry, that should say Zero Water instead of clearly filtered. So sorry, that's a boo-boo. Instead of clearly filtered there, it should say Zero Water. So Zero Water has a handheld glass pitcher option that is certified for removal of perfluorinates, lead, and chromium. The problem is you've got to change the filters every 20 to 40 gallons. So you have to let your patients know that that is an add-on cost they have to calculate. Clearly filtered, speaking of clearly filtered, also has a pour-through pitcher that works well, but they don't have a glass option. So that is what I have to talk about in terms of options for affordable interventions for our EM patients. And that's me. All right.
Amazing. Thank you, Lynn. And if you didn't have a chance to ask a question, you can always post it in our NAEM group chat, the groups.io chat group, and we can get to it at another time. Okay, moving along. We have actually a group panelists here. We're going to rapid fire. Each panelist is going to present a clinical pearl on how to approach complex patients, which I'm sure many of us have. So why don't we get going? We're going to start with Dr. Catherine, and then Tina, Stephanie, Louise, and Lynn. You got 2 minutes each. Go.
All right, thanks, Lori May. Yeah, my pearl is really about using the EHQ. I mean, don't discount the importance of using this guideline, this questionnaire, the residential and occupational timeline, especially in a complex case, right? Like the history and timeline of environmental exposures is just so critical to understanding the disease process and really like what's going on for the patient. It's really the first step that I think, right, of deciding like what kind of testing or treatment you might want to start. It can really guide you in your case, especially with complex cases. You know, they can be so overwhelming and you might not know where to start. But if you can tie certain exposures or life events to the onset of symptoms, it's really helpful to give you, insights into next directions and where to go with your patient. I always find too that the EHQ is a really educational experience for my patients as they're filling it out. Just like all the questions that I'm asking, and like they're like, "Oh, well, why are you asking? Like, what does it matter that I was lived in a house built before 1978, or that I lived near a gas station, or some of the less obvious questions?" It's like, "Oh, or like, oh yes, I really do have a lot of plastics in my life." Kind of like light bulb education teaching moment for them, just filling out the form. And like we ask about chemical sensitivities and like other healthy habits, like sauna, for example, or air and water filters. It's just a good place to understand where your patient is at and where you want them to go, and to really help them think critically about their exposures, their timeline, and like what are the things that they might not know about, or that they're like, oh yeah, like I would love to sauna, like that's a great idea. So anyway, don't forget to use the EHQ. It's really valuable, and that's my clinical pearl for this evening.
Great, thanks. And next we have Tina talking about the trauma of being sick.
I think it's ironic that I am coming in psychedelic or not quite seen for my you have a distorted image of me, and I guess that's symbolic that it's just a reminder, especially as we get into our left brain thinking about mycotoxins and metals and, the myriad of things that could be affecting our patient. And we're really in our left brains trying to sort it all. That we have to remember that these patients often come from a place of deep trauma and commingled with medical trauma, that they've been gaslit, ignored, isolated, dismissed, misdiagnosed, medicated, and down pathways that had nothing to do with their illness. And so this is just a reminder to spend a bit of time with your patients, especially in the beginning months, the first 6 months, maybe even a year, with some of these really sick patients, of validating and recognizing and holding space for that trauma that they had to go through, and that likely they're still having to go through, not just in the medical community, but in their own personal lives and with their families, friends, greater society at large. That they can't, living in a bubble is not possible. And so I just wanted to give a shout out and also say thanks to Dr. Paul Anderson, that we cross pollinate with a lot, of reminding me of this, especially when I was working with my MCS patients. So just holding space for your patients and making some time and visits for that is important.
Great, thank you, Tina. And then we've got Stephanie again, and a couple of quick pearls on impacts of long COVID.
Yes, so we know that long COVID has basically caused anything that's sort of smoldering in the background to suddenly flare. So people that didn't know they had mold issues, it's suddenly much worse. Same thing with their chronic fatigue. It's bringing out all these things like reactivation of Epstein-Barr, different viruses. It's damaging the mitochondria and the cell membrane. So it's a big problem. And then, like I was saying earlier, the microplastics are also complicating that, I think, as much, because it's harder to detox. So one of the big things I recommend with patients, and I've done a lot of IV vitamin C, high dose vitamin C with them. It's more than one modality, but what I've learned is I'll do those and ozone. Ozone is fantastic. It oxygenates their microcirculation, and the inflammation in their body gets better. And it helps release, get rid of these pathogens and these reactivated viruses, not just spike protein. I've seen it work really well. And then the problem with not being able to do ozone or any of those treatments is you just get them in the sauna, like I talked about earlier. And then, so I've had patients do all of that. And then guess what? The colonics were the game changer. So it's like you're getting rid of so much problems, right? So many reactivation of mast cells, inflammation, viral load, histamine, and their liver suddenly can start getting rid of the spike. And so I've seen that happen. If they can't do that, just coffee enemas, coffee during a colonic, because we know that the palmitic acid actually helps open up the bile and the tiny biliary caniculi of the liver. So these are things, ivermectin, low-dose naltrexone, because you get we've got this, immune dysfunction where you get the Th1, Th2 imbalance. Low-dose naltrexone has helped a lot of patients. And finally, there was another thing I was going to mention. The nicotine patch. Just tiny doses of the nicotine patch is, just a quarter of a piece of one. Start wearing those, and that nicotine is helping that acetylcholine deficiency that's being triggered by the spike protein. So it's a multi system poison, and so you treat everything.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. And we've got Louise asking the right questions of your patients.
Hi, thanks so much. I just wanted to follow up on what Catherine was talking about and a little bit of what Tina was talking about. Patients who have been sick often are coming in with their own timeline and their own idea about what actually happened. And often they've misconnected what has actually happened, right? So they'll be talking about this big stress, and all of their symptoms started at the time of the big stress. But what that big stress actually was potentially moving into a moldy space, or suddenly having an EMF tower that got built right next door, or having this other thing that happened at that same time. And when we don't ask those questions, we miss it. So kind of going through the history to really make sure, where were they living, what was happening at the time of their new set of symptoms. As the late Dr. Walter Crinian always said, new symptom, new exposure, right? Trying to really make that connection. And so I do love the EHQ, and I don't use it on my very first visit. So I have the patients come in and I try and get the history as much as I can, but then I'll say to them, I've got this crazy form, it's 8 pages, are you willing to kind of fill it out? Because then they take it home and are able to fill that all out and come back with new insights, or for me to suddenly see the new insights. There's all of these exposures that have happened in one category because it's kind of organized in that way. So it's important to just be thinking through that other thing and not just believe the patient's story. Not that we don't believe the patient's story, but don't believe their narrative that the reason they got sick is because of this one thing, because they often aren't realizing the things that they could have been getting sick from. Okay, that's it for me.
Whoops, sorry. Thank you, Louise. That was great. And last but not least, we've got Lynn, again, treating the person, not just the test.
For the last 20 years, I have been asked, what tests should I use to identify the toxicants that are making my patients sick? And I'm going to get very real right now and say that, unfortunately, we don't have access to those tests. We can't test for organochlorine pesticides. They're in the adipose. We can't test for dioxins, difurans, or polychlorinated biphenyls. They're stored away in the adipose. We can't get the accurate information that we need, for example, for bisphenol A, unless we do a 24-hour urine. We probably need to catch it in glass. So there's all kinds of complicated nuance to toxicant testing. What I can say is the most common mistake that I have seen over and over and over again, not the fault of the providers, they just don't have the information they need, is to do a toxicant test and identify in the urine the highest level of toxicant and blame that as the problem. And that is the absolute wrong thing to do. Because, first of all, high urine levels of toxicants are a good sign because it means you can metabolize and eliminate that toxicant. And the best example I can give is a couple, this is a real life example, lived together, elderly, they had lived together for the last 50 years, ate the same diet. The urine, I think this was a Great Plains lab at the time, toxicant profile for one of them, there was nothing there. It looked great, right? There was a urine toxicant profile for the other, and that urine toxicant profile was extremely high. Guess which one was the sick one? The individual with no toxicants in her urine because she could not metabolize and excrete them. So we have to be very careful about identifying the cause of the problem, quote unquote, by just looking for high levels of toxicants. Where this is not true is in metals testing. We can actually relate high levels of toxicants in the blood and the urine to either exposure, ongoing exposure, or a body burden. We can do that with lead. We can't do that with mercury, unfortunately, but we can do it with other metals like cadmium. So you're probably getting the idea that environmental medicine is kind of complicated. It's kind of complicated. And so you actually have to learn it, just like you have to learn oncology, just like you have to learn OB in order to actually birth babies. You've got to know a lot. It's the same thing with environmental medicine. Fortunately, it's all knowable. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody thought twice before they did a toxin test and identified the cause of the problem. If you cannot take the disease or the symptoms and understand the pathophysiology of them, for instance, oh, that's a bisphenol symptom, or oh, that's a cadmium symptom, then it might be a mistake to just take a high level of a toxicant and blame that on the patient's signs and symptoms. Okay, that's all I got.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, we're going to tweak things a little bit. We have some questions kind of coming in from previous panelists. So before we jump into the next little chat. I just thought I'd pose some of the questions. So if I'll maybe call out whoever wants to answer the question, feel free, or I'll try and kind of guide it. So one question that came in was just around the saunas. I believe that came in after Lynn's last little panelist breakout. And somebody was just asking about what kind of liver herbs and binders and how are you timing it around before or after saunas?
I would love to hear Stephanie answer this question. I don't know if she's still here with us.
Yeah,
Let's see.
I am.
Yeah, what do you
So
think, Dr. McCarter?
I like Therasage. The portable sauna Therasage is a good brand. The Heavenly Heat is all no EMF and made with hardwood or poplar hardwoods and no glues. And I believe Sauna Ray is the same. It has basswood. So I like Heavenly Heat because they have dry sauna and infrared, and then they have adaptable. But most people like the infrareds, but I will say those are the best. I like those the most. The second part of the question was, what was it?
Binders, liver herbs, before and
Yeah,
after.
so using them before and after saunas, what do
Yeah.
you use?
So Dr. Ray and I did a whole thing with firefighters. We did niacin before sauna. We actually had alpha ketogluteric acid, niacin, and glutathione, like low dose, like 75 milligram. But I've learned that if I give all that at once, some of the patients can't drive home. They start to detox their brain. So I start with niacin, and then I usually add the glutathione. And then if they're doing well, we start adding alpha ketogluteric acid because that crosses the blood-brain barrier. And then after sauna, vitamin C, and I use whatever they can tolerate as far as binder, charcoal. Typically, I'll do psyllium, vitamin C, minerals, and then later on have them do the binder. And I use zeolite, pectosol. It depends on their sensitivity. Charcoal. There's one other thing you can do right after sauna, and that is a little tablespoon of an organic oil that they tolerate because it'll make the bile contract even more. So we were really, Dr. Ray, is people that knew him, he was just about, let's make this even better. So these were the things we found that really helped.
Great.
Great, amazing. And since you're on, Stephanie, Kevin Wand was asking about hearing aids and just having some of the issues that come up with hearing aids, and that they've tried some different kinds in terms of the EMF and
That's a big problem. And Zound, Zound has a pair, but there was another one I can tell you in a second that Dr. Magda Havas told me about because I was at a lecture and we thought we had turned the hearing aids off, but we still were getting signal on this gentleman's hearing aids, and so it's a really difficult thing. But there is a new model, and it's a pretty strong signal. These hearing aids, it's several thousand microwatts going into their brain. So let me look that up for you. Should know that off the top of my head. It's Signia, signia.net. And the model was the Pure 10 NX, N like Nancy, X like X-ray. So that one is a non-wireless model. But yeah, it's a difficult situation with that.
Great, thank you. Vandita asked, what IV material do you use that minimizes introducing phthalates and microplastics? And can you flush with 12 mils of saline to minimize plastics?
Yeah, I think flushing is important. We used to have glass bottles back in the day. Dr. A would never use plastics. So maybe if we all start, basically, microplastics and plastics is getting more mainstream. Maybe we can all email Baxter and some of these companies and say, bring glass bottles back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here.
It made a
Okay,
difference. I saw the difference.
Great, thank you. So any unanswered questions, again, we'll try and get to them either in the group chat or later on. So next, our last kind of breakout panelist is Dr. Lynn Patrick. Once again, she'll be chatting about linking toxins and disease and how to do that.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, so not necessarily in this order, but I think it's always important to check with databases like the Collaborative for Health and the Environment. This is the Toxicant and Disease Database. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and go there live because why not? All right. let's see if I can do this and then do that. Okay, so here we are at the Toxicant and Disease Database. And this is part of the resources you can see here. That's how I got here. There are other wonderful resources. This is basically physicians and researchers who do wonderful, wonderful education and provide incredible resources in the field of environmental medicine, health and the environment, toxic exposures, etc. So Toxicant and Disease Database. You can select either a disease category. So let's see, I was looking at adult, I think it might be here, adult onset leukemias. So you can look for a disease or you can look for a disease category. Let's see what we've got. So what this is all of the literature, all the research up to 2011, I believe, on what exposures are linked to adult onset leukemias. You can see 3 categories: strong evidence, good evidence, and limited evidence. It does not mean that there is not good evidence for the toxicants in the limited evidence category. It just means they have not been studied. So for instance, atrazine has not really been studied as a cause of adult onset leukemias. However, if you have a patient who has an adult onset leukemia and they have high levels of atrazine in their urine, I'm going to contradict myself here, but this is what happens in environmental medicine. It is a really good idea to eliminate that source of atrazine from their exposome, right? We don't want atrazine in the exposome of anybody who has adult onset leukemias, but we definitely don't want formaldehyde. And formaldehyde is a solvent that is found in high levels in indoor air. And we've done many, many podcasts on that, Dr. Fine and myself, as well as ionizing radiation. I'm going to say non-ionizing radiation is probably problematic as well. Ethylene oxide and 1,3-butadiene are solvents that you also don't want. So in the case of cancer, it's a little trickier. But in other diseases, you definitely want to look at exposure as a big part of that condition. The other nice thing about this database is that you can, for example, let's click on formaldehyde and see what else formaldehyde is related to. So let's say another family member has a contact dermatitis or maybe a sinonasal cancer. Well, that's definitely an extremely high index of suspicion for formaldehyde in the indoor air environment of that family, right? Formaldehyde, of course, for those of you that are familiar with it, is most well known as an inducer, meaning a causative agent for asthma and allergies, as well as autoimmune disease, not just antibodies, but disease. So real important to know. But this is a great database to actually just take a look-see. Again, you can see here that the 2011 disease list is going to have some references that you can take a look at. They're all hyperlinked. And, a lot's come out in the last 14 years on formaldehyde. But this is a pretty good base. They have not received any funding to update the database. If you feel so motivated, it's a great organization to fund. But I think that they're doing great work. They also, just by the way, have wonderful webinars. I think they probably are right here. I listen to their webinars all the time because they're so good. It's like breaking science. It's really great. And it really helps me in the work that I do. Okay, so let's go back to, let me see what I'm going to get here. I think, oh, you guys can't, can you guys see my slides? You can't probably because I'm not sharing them. It's kind of one of the extreme limitations of Zoom. Okay, so what else? Well, this is a list I'm going to go through now that was put together by students and myself In our year-long course, we're partners with NAEM in providing education. This is an environmental medicine year-long course that we teach. So I don't have PMIDs. I apologize for all of this, but there are PMIDs listed in our course for all of these associations. And I want you to have these because I think it's unfortunately not part of our greater medical education or naturopathic medical education to be able to make these connections between, for example, chlorinated pesticides and both coronary and cerebral vascular disease, right? We don't think about that when we have patients who come into us who are in their 20s and 30s who say they've just been diagnosed with, they've had a stroke or they've just been diagnosed with cardiovascular disease. Same thing with polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs. We don't make those associations, but believe me, they are strongly made in the epidemiologic literature. So these are rule outs for patients who have coronary and cerebrovascular disease. Of course, toxicants like mold and mycotoxins, which are not well demonstrated in the medical literature, are also suspect, as is COVID, right? COVID has changed everything. And as Dr. McCarter just mentioned, we really have to think as COVID as an initiator of multiple pathologic pathways.
Hi, Lynn. Sorry to interrupt, but I think we have to keep moving. Is there kind of a quick sum up here? Sorry to interrupt you.
I'm just going to let you know that you have access to all of these toxicant and disease associations. And last but not least is MCAS, right? We don't think of pesticides like permethrins or wildfire, especially urban wildfire interface fires, as initiators of MCAS. But just like EMFs, which should be on this list, we just don't have a, actually, I need to add it. This is a live list. That's why I'm kind of giving it to you in the slides, because it's always changing. We're always adding new things that we don't usually think of, these toxicant exposures, right? Lead and mercury are definitely related to MCAS. So anyway, hopefully it will help kind of broaden your thinking as you're continuing to think about the toxicant disease connection.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. Sorry to rush you. We were a little behind. You actually did the exact amount of time that you're supposed to be doing, so that's perfect.
Good for you.
Okay, so we've gone through lots. Again, just to reiterate that the questions that haven't been answered in either the chat or the Q&A group, we will put them together and put them into the groups, the group.io group for the NEA members. So if you have burning questions still that haven't been answered, feel free to check in there in the next little while. Okay, next we've got our member mingle session. So we've got some breakout rooms coming. It'll automatically put you into a breakout room, and there'll be some moderators in there, and they'll go through some questions, get to know you. And remember to stick around to the end so that you have a chance to win some amazing prizes. And again, once we come back, then we'll have either Kathleen or Catherine presenting who are the winners for those. Okay, so have fun in your breakout groups.
Okay, I believe that they're all in breakout rooms.
Are we supposed to go into breakout rooms?
No, I didn't put you guys in breakout rooms unless you want to be.
Ooh, good. We can go eat dinner.
What?
Maybe you are.
I can glow.
Tina, it's
Tina,
so crazy.
Did
You're
you
so
take
crazy.
drugs? What are you on mushrooms? What's going on, babe?
Yes.
I just took my progesterone this late.
You're on fire. Virtual fire.
Wow, that is so wild. I've never seen that in a Zoom meeting before.
Have you ever done the Van Gogh illusion, you know, how they put it up on the walls? Oh, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful exhibit. I feel like I'm in that. With all the light and-
It's pretty cool. I would